Welcome to ZoomInData. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining the 23rd video in our extended Azure Logic Apps series. In this session, titled Cost Optimization Masterclass, Real Savings in Production, we will cover detailed breakdown of every cost driver in both consumption and standard models. Proven techniques to reduce Logic Apps bills by 50 to 80% in real-world deployments. Monitoring tools, alerts, and governance patterns to prevent cost surprises. Real examples of cost leaks and how to fix them permanently. 2026 Pricing Edition. Cost optimization is one of the most valuable skills for Logic Apps professionals, especially when workflows scale to millions of executions per month. If you find this content valuable, please subscribe to ZoomInData and enable notifications to stay updated. Let us begin. What are the main cost components in Azure Logic Apps consumption model? Trigger executions. Each polling check or event receipt counts. Action executions. Every built-in action after free allowance, every managed connector call, storage, run history retention, inputs, outputs, queues, tables, integration accounts, fixed monthly tier price, basic, standard, premium, enterprise connectors, per call premium surcharge. What are the main cost components in Azure Logic Apps standard model? Fixed monthly compute capacity, vCPU plus memory based on hosting plan, charged even when idle. Managed connector calls, same per call rate as consumption. Azure storage, fully separate. Blobs, queues, tables for state and history. Integration accounts, same fixed tier pricing as consumption. How many free built-in operations are included in the consumption model? Azure provides an initial free allowance of built-in operations per subscription, typically 4,000 per day per workflow, but exact number varies by region, subscription type. Above this threshold, every built-in action execution is charged at standard rates. Managed and custom connectors are always charged per call, no free tier. What is the biggest cost driver in high-volume consumption workflows? Frequent polling triggers, e.g., recurrence every 1 minute or when a file is added polling. Each check counts as an execution even if no data. Loops, for each, until, that execute many iterations. Each interaction is metered. High-frequency managed connector calls. Example Office 365 email polling, SQL polling. Why is the standard model often cheaper for high-throughput workloads? Fixed capacity cost replaces per execution metering for built-in actions, unlimited free executions. No multi-tenant contention. Predictable performance and no unexpected throttling charges. Ideal when monthly execution volume exceeds 1-2 million actions. Break-even point varies by connector usage. How do connector calls impact overall cost in both models? Standard connectors, $0.000125 per call. Enterprise connectors, $0.001 per call, 8 times more expensive. Calls inside loops or retries multiply cost rapidly. Built-in connectors, HTTP, Compose, Parse.json, are free, unlimited in standard, metered in consumption after free tier. What is the most common cost leak in real-world Logic Apps deployments? Overly aggressive polling intervals. Example, every 30 seconds instead of webhook. No retention policy. Run history kept for years instead of 7 to 30 days. For each loops with high concurrency, calling premium connectors repeatedly. How do you reduce polling-related costs? Switch to webhook, push triggers wherever possible, HTTP request, event grid, service bus push. Increase polling interval, example, 5 to 15 minutes instead of 1 minute, when polling is unavoidable. Use change tracking APIs, example, delta queries in Dataverse, incremental exports in SARS, instead of full polling. What retention settings give the best cost versus debuggability balance? Set run history retention to 7 to 30 days for most production workflows. Critical workflows, financial, compliance, right pointing arrow 90 to 365 days plus archive to log analytics. Non-critical or high-volume flows right pointing arrow 1 to 7 days to minimize storage costs. How do you optimize for each loop costs? Enable concurrency but set reasonable limit, 10 to 20, to avoid overwhelming downstream systems. Batch process items, aggregate array, single connector call, instead of per item calls. Use until loops sparingly, prefer for each with early exit condition. What is the best way to monitor and alert on cost spikes? Create budget in Azure Cost Management plus billing with alerts at 80% and 100%. Use cost analysis right pointing arrow filter by resource type, Microsoft, Logic, Workflows, right pointing arrow group by meter, actions, triggers, connectors. Set log analytics alert, Azure metrics, where metric name equals, build actions, summarize sum, total, by bin, time generated, 1H. How do you use tags to track and allocate Logic Apps costs? Tag every Logic app with keys, environment, dev, test, prod, team, project, cost center. Use Azure Cost Management, cost allocation by tag. Enforce tagging policy via Azure Policy. What cost-saving pattern should be used for scheduled batch jobs? Use recurrence trigger with long interval, daily, weekly, instead of frequent short polls. Process in batches, list rows with top, skip or fetch XML paging. Disable workflow outside business hours if not needed 24/7. How do you reduce AI-related costs in intelligent workflows? Cache frequent embeddings, responses in Azure Redis or Cosmos DB. Use cheaper models, GPT-4o Mini, for simple classification. Reserve GPT-4o for complex reasoning. Batch multiple prompts into one OpenAI call where API allows. What is the impact of stateless workflows on cost? Standard model. Stateless workflows do not persist state right pointing arrow lower storage costs, no run history tables. Faster execution, fewer compute seconds build. Use stateless for high volume, fire and forget scenarios, real-time event processing. How do you identify and eliminate unnecessary connector calls? Review run history right pointing arrow look for repeated connector actions in loops. Replace with built-in actions, HTTP instead of managed connector when possible. Use Compose plus HTTP for custom APIs instead of managed wrapper. What role does Azure Advisor play in cost optimization? Advisor scans Logic Apps and suggests shorter retention, disable idle workflows, right-size standard plans. Provides estimated monthly savings for each recommendation. Review weekly in production subscriptions. How do you handle cost for integration accounts in large B2B setups? Choose basic tier for small partner count. Upgrade to standard, premium only if needed. Minimize schema, map count, archive unused artifacts. Use one integration account per business unit to control costs. What is the break-even point between consumption and standard? Consumption becomes more expensive when monthly actions exceed -1-3 million. Exact number depends on connector mix. Standard is cheaper when you have consistent high volume and low idle time. Use Azure Pricing Calculator plus real usage data to find crossover point. How do you implement automated cost shutdown for non-24/7 workflows? Use recurrence trigger to enable workflow at business hours via Logic Apps Management Connector. For standard, scale plan to minimum during off hours, manual or scheduled Azure automation. Avoid in always-on critical flows. What monitoring query helps detect cost leaks? Azure Metrics, where resource provider equals Microsoft, Logic, and metric name equals build actions, summarize total equals sum, total, by bin, time generated, 1H, resource, order by total desk. Shows highest billing workflows per hour per day. What monitoring query helps detect cost leaks? Azure Metrics, where resource provider equals Microsoft, Logic, and metric name equals build actions, summarize total equals sum, total, by bin, time generated, 1H, resource, order by total desk. Shows highest billing workflows per hour per day. What is the cost impact of loops and retries? Every inner iteration in for each, until counts as separate actions. Retries multiply action execution count. Optimize. Reduce iterations, batch calls. Limit retries to transient errors only. How do you justify Logic Apps cost savings to executives? Compare TCO. On-premises BizTalk versus Logic Apps, servers, licensing, patching. Show consumption savings for variable workloads versus fixed capacity alternatives. Present before, after metrics, execution cost, storage cost, operational effort. What final cost optimization checklist would you recommend? Switch polling right pointing arrow webhook triggers wherever possible. Set short run history retention, 7 to 30 days. Use built-in connectors instead of managed ones. Enable concurrency and batching in loops. Monitor with budgets plus alerts. Tag everything right pointing arrow allocate costs by team, project. Review Azure Advisor recommendations weekly. Thank you for watching this detailed session on building resilient and idempotent workflows in Azure Logic Apps. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to ZoomInData. More advanced Azure Logic Apps content is coming soon. Stay connected and keep learning. See you in the next video.